Talk, 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 talk. Art of the Zodiac presents Talk, 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 Talk.
Oh, fascinating. I love that. Top of the chart, most visible part of your face, most physical part of the body or the most recognized part of the body is the face always. I had a really similar thing where like I had my MC is also not at 18, mind you, it's at 5 of Aries, but I broke out. Like I had acne. I had acne that is unprecedented acne for me, just like leading up, and then it started to disappear yesterday and today.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, great. Love that. Aries, the head.
Totally. It was another friend of mine was like messaging me and was like, so like not astrologer friend, like I think I know that like Aries rules the head, their sun's in Aries. I woke up with a sinus infection. Like check. Another friend, another Aries had like pink eye. So there you go.
Here we go, all the base things. We've made it though. We're here today. But again, in between, like this is such a odd portal to talk within. Like I'm excited, of course. But like between this chironic solar eclipse that was on just steroidal and unhinged, and then Mars is about to bump into Saturn tomorrow. You get Pisces?
I know. I can't. It's interesting. And I don't know if you thought about this, but I think it wasn't to me as talked about as much. But traditionally, 19 degrees Aries is the exaltation of the sun.
The sun. Yes.
Yeah. So you get this like peak. It's even weirder because it's like the sun's at its peak being eclipsed.
That's the unhinged part to me. That's the part to me that's like steroidal. Thank you. You literal psychic. You just named, because I was like, it's the sun's exaltation degree. So it's like, it is the sun at its literal peak. And yet Chiron's there being eclipsed. Mars is in this really odd position as the dispositor. Like all of it's just really intense. Yeah. Yeah.
The funny thing is I was like, I'm doing these talks. I'm actually not doing them astrology more, but bringing on Marvel because I want to hear about Marvel's like life. But I'm like, okay, but we have to talk about this astrology because we did an eclipse episode and now we're just like in it.
We're in it. We're so in it. Yeah. I have to say my one little astrology takeaway today as I was walking home was I just actually had a gratitude for Saturn. Like I have gratitude for Saturn right now. I actually think that Saturn is slowing Mars down in a way that is so helpful during this period of time. I think our egos may not feel that loveliness of it, but on a more Piscean soul level, I am feeling deep gratitude for Saturn. And mind you, I have Saturn and Mars co-present in my 8th house natally. So like for me to have love for Saturn is like this has been a full arc for me. Like I've come to love Saturn, especially right now.
I also love Saturn. Someone who has a very unhinged Mars natally. I'm Mars and Aries, and I'm like lots of fire. Like I know the pain and the rashness of too much fire, literally. And so there's something I think you called it right. Even thinking about like the world events, like we need to be slowed the fuck down. Like
you're right. I was thinking I was thinking individually, tribally, but I was definitely thinking collectively. I was like, oh, good. I'm reading the newspaper I always read the newspaper during eclipse season because I'm like, what's going on? And I love to see things slowing down in like, especially in wartime like events. Like things are slowing down. We're stopping, and that's that Saturn like syrupy, slow. Put the brakes on the action. So yeah, grateful for Saturn right now.
My other eclipse question I have to ask is, do you look at it? Do you not look at it? Thoughts on this?
I had a moment to myself last night as I scrolled through all the New York Times photos of people looking at the eclipse, and like that was my moment. And I'm such a voyeur, like total Aquarius stellium, in the 8th. So I'm so voyeuristic. I was like, oh, this is fascinating. But the feeling I have in general, I would not travel to go see an eclipse. Like that's not something I would ever do unless I was like really, I have a rule. It's like if I'm really hungry for change and I want to flip my life upside down, I will go look at an eclipse. But that hasn't presented itself to me in my lifetime. And I did though yesterday, to be fully tea on the podcast, I did put on, like, my partner has a very dark pair of sunglasses, and I did at 11 o'clock a.m. PST, I went and like looked at the sun, like the chunk that was bitten out of the sun yesterday here in LA. And I did just like peek and I was like, ouch. And then I took the sunglasses off and I was like, great. Okay. So I like looked at the whatever, we're in the like very partial,
Yeah.
yeah, wherever. It was very like light. I was like, I'll take some change, but I don't want to take a lot of change. I will say my partner looked at she went and traveled for the 2017 solar eclipse.
Okay.
And the two people she traveled with, and this is what I say to my clients who are like, should I go look at it? The two people she traveled with, one was a partner of almost a decade, romantic partner of almost a decade. The other was a friend, like her sister, closest friend of 20 years. Neither of them are in her life anymore within 2 years of that eclipse. Gone out of her life. So I always tell people, like, you are playing with fire. It is extreme. So like, if you have consciousness, go forth. But most people are like, I just want to see it. And I'm like, my superstitious Pisces nature is like, yeah, and a lot of things can change very quickly.
Oh, I'm totally with you. I was at I think in previous eclipse, I've been doing some sort of mantra work, but this one I was just like at the Korean spa hiding out. There's like no windows. I'm in salt water. Cool. But I have to say, just even like looking at the imagery of people, it's like if you're an astrologer, even if you're weary, there's this like trepidatious, but just like seeing pictures of people posting on social, smiling, staring into it. I'm like, this is going to come back to bite you. Yeah. Like this.
And the US in general, I mean, I talk about it on my podcast, but like just the US, middle America, all these hyper Christian lands, all these people who are like lower income white folks, like it's just really, it's all really poetic during an election. And mind you, that last eclipse in 2017 was really tied in with that election cycle as well. So it's just, oh yeah, it's the US is getting it's going to be a huge shift that we're going to see, and it's right on time, so we'll see how it goes. Strap in.
Right.
Now we'll talk about art. I'm just kidding. It's like, I'm sure astrology will sneak its way in because this is my timeline. I'm always
well. I mean, this is my first question to you, right? Like, because you do so much. I mean, I was thinking about this. I was like, you studied ceramics. You're an actor, like a performance artist, a comedian, and like you have like a full, robust like astrology career, right? Like, so maybe we just maybe we use astrology as a focal point. How did you get into astrology? What was going on in your life?
Yeah. Wow. Well, I definitely want to talk about like a natal aspect I have in my chart that I think will help describe this, but let's start all the way at the genesis, just on a mundane level, on a worldly level, physical level, I should say, on a physical level. I was 12 years old. I was raised in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yeah.
And I was 12 years old when my mother started taking me more consistently to a place in Salt Lake City called the Golden Braid. And the Golden Braid is like a new age bookstore / close to a restaurant called Oasis. It's totally an establishment. Anyone who knows Salt Lake City, who knows it well, probably knows of Oasis and the Golden Braid. I hope they're still there. Probably are. I would just go. It's a huge bookstore. It's not just a new age bookstore. I should say it has all kinds of books, but it has a very robust new age section, and it does gear towards new age people. There's all kinds of books, but I, as a 12-year-old, went straight to the astrology, numerology, and like occult sciences section. So by the time I was 12, I was just in that section, and I was a voracious reader. It's part of how I like dealt with being a queer person and a trans person at that time. I just was like in books, and esoterica in general felt very queer to me, right? There was something about it that's like no one believes in it. It kind of exists in these liminal like philosophical spaces. It's pseudo, and I was like, well, I'm pseudo. I'm definitely pseudo. So I was like, I can hang out with pseudosciences and stuff like that. And also it wasn't gendered. It's like the identity of it, right? Like I like the book of birthdays, things like that. Learning about chakras, those things, like they're not gendered so much. They can be, but they're not. And like astrology is not gendered per se. I mean, when we get into the nitty gritty, yes, historically, but like there's ways that you're making identity formation outside of a male female dynamic, right? So that's where I was able to find solace in terms of building my identity. And my parents are both like biochemists, they're scientists, so very left brain. And yet they read tarot cards to like help them solve like major scientific discoveries. Like my father's like the George Clooney of biochemistry. So it's like really wild. He also solved a lot of he has a grand air trine in his chart. And
Yeah.
it falls one of the points falls in his 12th. And he would solve a lot of his scientific like conundrums in his dreams. So he would wake up from a dream and be like, oh, I solved it.
That's a common science thing, right? Like Einstein did that shit.
Yeah. So my dad has that same thing. Anyway, so my parents were like, but they were super compartmentalized. They were like, we don't believe in any of that, but we do it. So it was that weird thing of like practicing occult magic, but being like, we don't believe in any of it. But they were right. So anyway, they really supported me. However, like that my mom bought me the book she bought me was like the only astrology book you'll ever need.
Yeah.
I think when I was 13 or 14.
Okay.
Like, and then I held on to it for more than a decade, maybe 2 decades. And I think I gave it to someone at some point because whatever, I don't know. But I read that book front to back a million times and was just like so in it. And then spent like really, so 13 years old, I spent a decade being sort of privately and secretly into it, but not really sharing it with anybody. And I did that. I mean, I was very private, believe it or not, Vivi. I was very private and like shy and not hyper shy. Like I'm a very fake extrovert. Like I'm very good at being extroverted, but I'm truly an introvert. But I basically like had a lot of things closeted, including like my gender identity. And one of those things was astrology. I was pretty closeted about it. So I had astrological thoughts, like queer thoughts. I had astrological thoughts all throughout high school, but I just didn't share them with anybody because it was almost like a language that only I spoke. And I didn't seek community for it either. So there wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go find other astrologers. And this was, as you know, this was before YouTube. This was before, we had access to like disseminated astrological information. And anyway, so that's sort of the genesis of it. And then when I moved to Humboldt County, Northern California, and went to Humboldt State University, which is now called Humboldt Polytechnic University, I started to get into New Age. It's a New Age like enclave, essentially.
Okay.
So I got deep into human design. I got deep into astrology, much deeper into astrology. And I started to read for friends in college. And as I started to read for friends, they were like, "You're really good at this." And I was like, "Oh, what? I don't know." And then to bring it all the way to this moment, I really started to develop a professional practice actually in 2020. And the only reason I didn't start sooner is that, as you are well aware, I was so busy doing 80 million things that I was like, why would I have a private practice, But then when I started to do it during the pandemic, because everything stopped, my performance art career essentially stopped in its tracks. I started doing one-on-one sessions with people, and they were like, "Oh, this is like, we need to do this. You need to do this all the time." And like, I built a whole roster of like regular clients actually in 2020. Yeah.
Wow. You mentioned that from the age of 12, you said for like about a decade, it was something that you kept secret. There were a lot of things you kept secret.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what was the sort of coming out and what did that look like? And did everything come out at once?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes. Kind of. I mean, my chart, it's funny because my chart falls on a cardinal axis, like 1st, 4th, 7th, 10th are all in, cardinal signs, Cancer rising. And my moon is at 21 degrees of Libra at the bottom of my chart, in the 4th house. Not close to the IC, but it's there.
Yeah.
And I met a person at 22, 23 years old who was my first long-term relationship, moon in Libra. Like, I'm very drawn. She's very motherly, 4th house. I also have a very strong relationship to my mother, and I'm not afraid to talk about Freud here, but like this person, her rising is at 19 degrees of Libra. So she came in, she also has very strong Aries, Capricorn, and Cancer placements. So she literally, like, when I think of the axis, it's like she turned my whole life. And part of that was like, she really saw me and saw my gender identity. She said to me, she's the only person who had ever said it to me. She was like, I see that there's a man in you, which is so like, however the language, whatever. But at the time, it meant a lot. And I was like, whoa. And so meeting her was psychedelic in a way, because all of a sudden I was like, oh, I need to become myself. And as I started to become myself in a gender way, I also was like, I'm also a witch. And this person at the time was like, you definitely are a witch, like, and the astrology is part of that. And that's where, so if you ask me what was sort of the tipping point or the cracking open, it was through a partnership. My Libra moon, like it's tucked away in the fourth house. So like, and it's my ruler, right? As a Cancer rising. So I'm like, oh, I'll just be private. And I'm a Pisces sun. So I'm like, I'll just hide for the rest of my life. No problem. But instead, this person like brought it sort of into reality. She was able to reflect for me that I could exist in the world, basically.
Wow. The astrologer part of my brain is like going off right now, right? Because I know that you're speaking about this part of your chart that's being highlighted by these eclipses. And I know that Aries is your that would be your 10th house, right? Where and so I'm curious to know, I know I know you're busy, there's so many things going on, but like, maybe this speaks more to the present moment, but do you track some of what's going on in your career back to that story? Like at this moment, is there like a tie back right now?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about 2014, 2015, right? Because that eclipses were happening there. And also definitely thinking, for me, the last time the North Node was in Aries, I was about to graduate junior high. So that's interesting. It's a 10th house thing. It's totally a 10th house thing, because you're about to enter high school and gain a new title. And you're also like, as an 8th grader where I was at, that you were the top of the school. You were like the leaders, 10th house. So that's a whole, but it also was, both 2014, 2015, and then 2006-ish. Those were both times where there was a lot of pain and wounding for me. And it's so funny because Chiron wasn't in Aries for either of those eclipse cycles, but now Chiron's in Aries, and I feel a lot less wounded. So it's really kind of backwards from maybe what you would think. It's like I did all the deep wounding work then. I was so traumatized, like heading into high school as a trans person. Like it's just so traumatizing, especially back in 2007 when I entered high school. And then in 2014, 2015, it was like right before I actually came out in 2012 as trans, 2013. And then I got top surgery in 2015. So that was like a big transition turning point. But it was pre-Laverne Cox on the cover of Time. So it was pre-trans tipping point. And so interestingly, the nodes in the 4th and 10th, it was like, although the North Node was in Libra at the time. So I was kind of hiding in the safety of a relationship in my 4th house. Like I was really hiding there. And I was very afraid that my 10th house of public identity, because the South Node was there at the time, I thought I was going to lose all my friends, Phoebe. I was fully convinced, because it was pre-trans tipping point. I literally was like, if I transition, I'm going to lose all my friends. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
It didn't happen, but like that was the fear. Yeah. And I guess to keep it really geeky, it's like 10th house is your title in the world. And like I changed my fucking name at that time. So it's like and that was the South Node like sucking a name away.
Wow. And where were you? I can't do math. I can't do like in the biography of things. Was that in college, post-college? Like where were you in your life at that point?
In 2014, 2015, I love this because I'm like really thinking about it now. You've got me thinking about it. Of course, North Node in the 4th. You're thinking like North Node in the 4th. I'm going to be tucked away from society. And I was in Humboldt County, but I had already graduated college, and I was hiding in the woods and was trimming weed to make money for top surgery. So I was like literally in the boonies, like no cell service, like taking a shower in like a natural shower, like living in my car. And I was completely tucked away from reality. Like I had no idea what was going on. And I lived on a weed farm for like multiple weed farms for like a year and a half, and made money for top surgery, and then came back out into the world, but that was what I was doing the last time the nodes were there.
That's such a crazy emerging story. It's interesting to think too, right? Like, I feel like I don't want to go too much into this present moment because I kind of want to take it back and have people get to know you. But like, I'm just so fascinated by the entire arc of your story. Well, maybe this is the place I want to go. When you were, 12 years old and you were at that bookstore and you were getting books on astrology, and you said that it was so interesting because you felt this like astrology felt like sort of a safe, queer place. Were you also sort of, what other books were you reading? Were you sort of kind of coming into your queer identity too in
Yeah,
that
yeah,
bookstore?
definitely. I read Tom Spanbauer, who's like an indigenous writer, and
Mm.
he writes more from he has this beautiful book called The Man Who Fell in Love with the Moon. Oh my gosh, Cancer Rising, here we are. The Man Who Fell in Love with the Moon, that was a seminal book for me because it's a fiction novel about a Berdache, which is like a two-spirit indigenous person. And regardless of like conversations about cultural appropriation,
Yeah.
I just resonated with that character because it was this character, their name is Shed, Shed, and they were, completely genderqueer. And that was, the closest thing. So I read all of Tom Spanbauer because most of his characters are queer, either implicitly or explicitly. And I also was obsessed with fantasy. I still am. I mean, Pisces, and like I've got a lot of intense mutable placements, which to me always is kind of like fantastical. Um, but the Pisces Virgo is really big. So I was reading like every kind of fantasy novel as an escape too. Like,
Yeah.
and I would read pretty much anything that was like science fiction or fantasy just to get out of the reality of Salt Lake City living. I was like in Catholic school in Salt Lake City, Utah. So yeah,
And your parents are scientists, and your mother's Spanish. Am I getting this right?
yeah. My mother's from Spain. Yeah, I'm first generation American on her side. Yeah,
Okay, like would that I feel like that kind of were they Catholic or was it a complete outsider situation?
it's such a strange thing because I was raised Catholic. My mother was raised Catholic, and it's basically the genetics, or not the genetics, the genealogy is that we've been discovering in the last couple of years is that my mother's actually, well, we are Sephardic Jews, so we're Spanish Jews that were converted to Catholicism at some point. We haven't figured out when. My mom's doing a whole deep dive because she's a researcher. So she's, I mean, a biochemical researcher, but she now is deep in the genealogy of it all.
That's
Yeah.
a common story I hear.
Yes, totally. I
Yeah.
met someone in LA recently who was like, "Oh yeah, my family, I was raised Catholic, but we're Sephardic Jews." So I always joke with people like I was raised Catholic in the Mormon Mecca of the United States, and I'm actually Jewish. Like that, you just can't make that kind of shit up. So, that's happening. And guess what? My one aspect in my chart that ties this all together is
Yeah.
like I have this exact opposition from the third and the ninth houses. I have this exact opposition to almost the minute between Jupiter and Virgo and my Mercury and Pisces. And so you've got religion, you've got the ninth house is also foreign lands, my mother, Spain, different cultures. Like it's all there. It's also the ability to I do a million things because my Jupiter and my Mercury like can't fucking stop. They're just like go, 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 go. In mutable signs, which means I have to learn to slow down and I have to learn to like stick through a project all the way through.
I need to send you some of that Saturn talismanic oil. I've just been like bathing in.
Yes, I do have a strong Saturn, thank God. Oh, thank God. But yes, I know those are those two planets, Jupiter, Mercury.
I love it.
Yeah.
Mercury is the rule breaker, and I think Mercury in Pisces is the ultimate rule breaker. It's totally rogue. Oh, you got muted for a moment, but you're back. Oh, you were coughing.
I was coughing. Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, also, I mean, this sort of like hermaphroditic planet. I love my Mercury and Pisces. It's been a gauntlet, as you well know. Oh my gosh, my fellow Mercury and Pisces. It's been a gauntlet to learn how to rein it in or figure out how to, you know, transmute the downloads that we're constantly getting into actual human language. But yeah, I love it.
No, it's you mentioned that you were um shy or like that you were like a secreted person or maybe so fourth house. And then like when did you did you always want to know? You always know you were a performer at heart? Like, did that part just emerge from you? Was like,
Mm.
because you studied ceramics. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I did. I studied ceramics while I was at Humboldt State University. I was so closeted in so many ways. And so I went to Humboldt initially to be a political science and critical race, gender, and sexuality studies major, which I, by the way, almost completed that degree and then switched to art, switched to art my junior year. And so I had essentially like a full double major under my belt, and everyone, including my parents, were like, "You lost your mind." And I was like, "I'm not a normie. Like, I can't do this." But here's the weird red thread. What are politicians? My partner always says this. Oh, I'm going to say it on the pod. She's always like, politics is Hollywood for ugly people. And so it's like, I know it's so mean. I love her. She's going to be so mad that I shared that on the pod. No, she's not mad. But politics is Hollywood for ugly people. And it's like, being a politician is you are on stage. So I think I always unconsciously did want to be on stage, but I thought it was through the realm of politics. Then when I spent time in political science classes, I was like, oh, I do not like any of these people. They seem completely soulless. And switched to ceramics. Ceramics really helped me understand my gender identity. It was a medium. It was a material that like is very trans to me. Ceramics just feels very trans because you're working with another body and you're morphing a body. Yeah, and clay's just, there's something very queer about clay, in my opinion. Anyway, I went to a residency in New York after I graduated college. After I went to got my top surgery, that was the first thing. I was like, make money from illegal trimming, like illegal weed trimming, make all that money cash. Like I was handed like bricks of cash, like a mafia. Anyway, that's a fun story for another time. And then I ended up in New York post top surgery at a ceramics residency. And there I had a professor at Rochester Institute of Technology say to me one day, he was like, you're hiding away in this ceramics lab, but you're actually a performer. Like I see you. And so it was similar, having the North Node in the seventh house. I have my North Node in the seventh house. I always feel like key partnerships like pull me out of my hiding. They really pull, they're just like, nope, that's what my partner did in 2014, like she was like, or 2012 when I was 23 years old. I see you, I see your gender. I see that you're a witch. And then again, this would have been 2017, 2016. No, it was 2016. A person was like, you're a performer. And that's what I respond really well to anytime someone's like, I see you and it feels like kismet, I'm like, okay. And so I did my first piece of performance art ever on my birthday in February of 2017. So it's like, did performance art for my birthday. That was my birthday present to myself. And then I never turned back. But I will also say, I'm a huge fan of the progressed chart in astrology. And my progressed chart has me as a Aries sun and a Leo rising.
That's my chart.
Yeah. So like gorgeous. This is why we're like resonating. And my moon's in Sag currently. So it's like I'm all fire right now, which like you can see my rosacea, but like I'm all fire. Do you know what I mean? It's just like a lot of heat in the body. And it's also Leo rising is like, we want to be seen,
I want to know, like, you're in the ceramics studio and someone sees you, and I just like love this vision of you make something like, you can make anything out of clay, and someone's like seeing you, like, I see you're trying to make something out of yourself, and like you just had top surgery and you're just sort of like coming into your own body, and you're like, okay, yeah, performance artist. Like, what was that first performance? That's what I want to know.
It's so cringe. I'm so excited you asked, and so like revealing and strange. My friend who is the professor at RIT is like Rochester Institute of Technology. It's like, it's more of rich kids tend to go there. It's like more of an upper, I don't know. There's something like, I don't know. RIT has a certain stature in upstate New York in terms of schools. Like, you have to have money to go there or you have to get a scholarship. It's one of those places. And my friend was a professor there and he invited me to perform for his like queer media class. And this was my birthday. He was like, February 21st, can you come? And I was like, sure, why not? And I didn't tell him it was my birthday, of course. I was still a very private person at the time. And I showed up. And what I did was I brought about 150 pounds of raw clay. And I I was the first performance. I mean, like, I don't know what I was doing. I just was like, whatever. And so I built this like phallic structure as I sort of like danced. Not, I wouldn't say it's quite dancing. I'm not sure what it was. Interpretive movement. I like interpretively moved to this SoundCloud breakdown version of, get ready for it, a Kanye West song. So Kanye West is like up, and now this is why it's like so cringe to me now, but it was back in 2016, so like he hadn't been like a full blown Nazi at this point, but it was I can't remember. Oh, it was a song. There is a meaning behind it in the sense that I wouldn't have just randomly chosen this song. It's a song called I Wonder, and it's from his graduation album. And his graduation album kept me alive in high school. Like, it was literally a talismanic album that kept me alive. It kept me from not wanting to just like leave the universe, because like, ooh, Pisces sun, like my south node's in my 12th house and my Placidus chart, like I got no problem disappearing. So my relationship to death as an 8th house stellium is like, why not? So it kept me alive, and so I played it as sort of, I don't know, it was an anchor for me, that song. It still is an anchor to a degree. I have a different relationship now because obviously Kanye's made some really interesting decisions in the last couple of years, but and then I got naked. So I would build these like phallic structures, and I would slowly do like a burlesque thing where I got naked, and then I gave myself a shot of testosterone in front of everybody. It's so cringe. Kanye West is playing the whole time. I scared like a kid out of the room. So like a child just left, just like a 21-year-old was like, I am so mortified that this person's trans, because I didn't look trans either. Like, I mean, I don't think so. Like, I was already passing, you know, like I looked like Justin Bieber by the time I was like 6 months into taking tea. So it was like, you know, I looked like a young boy. So people didn't expect it to be very like explicitly trans. It was, and then my performance art practice really built from that nascent performance, because the work was a lot about burlesque, body modification. Raw clay is a huge part of my performance art practice. I'm usually revealing my body over time in like a durational way. And then it's always like what I call the magic trick, but like taking all the clothes off and people being like, whoa, oh my God, I had an idea about who that person was, and now it's totally different. Yeah.
That I was listening to another podcast with you, and you were talking about, I believe, coming to LA and just being like hungry to just perform and just doing so much performance art. And I thought that you were talking, it seems like maybe some of that performance was built off that. If I'm getting this right, you were like making dildos out of clay and doing things.
Yes. Yes. I mean, yeah, the raw clay it's like I stopped firing the clay after a while and was like, I really went into sort of a Dada-esque space, or like even, I don't know, postmodern space with clay, and was just building my body and with raw wet clay. It's my favorite form of the medium. Like, I actually think clay loses something when it gets fired, in my opinion. And so, yeah, I was building. The first big performance I did in LA was at the Queer Biennial in 2018, and with John Waters, like talking right before I did this. Like, I didn't even know what I was stepping into as my first performance, but I built a whole door. I built this crazy door out of clay. It took me like, oh my God, it took me like a day and a half to build a door out of raw clay. And then I built what's it called? The holes, glory hole. I built a glory hole in it, and I like fucked my way through the door slowly, and like emerged like almost naked, but like with a dildo and a computer duct taped to me. Like, I was really trying to figure out trans identity and the internet and cyborgs, and very Aquarius. I was like really trying to figure out my identity and like where identities are headed given the nature of the internet. So that's like one of the many ways that my practice shifted, or was evolving, you know. But definitely lots of raw clay and dildos, things like that.
Now, you're a witch, and I think that's the title you go by. Okay.
Totally. Sure. Yeah.
Thinking about performance art as a type of ritual, right? Like, would you? I mean, Do you think during that sort of period of working with the clay and those performances, do you think you were sort of casting a spell, or was there some sort of like something cathartic that you were working through with that?
Oh, absolutely. All those things you just
Yeah.
said. I mean, that was beautifully put because, I have a few friends here in Los Angeles who we've had long dialogues around this.
Mm.
Kayla Tonge, who goes by Coco Ono, incredible performance artist. Peter Kalish, an incredible performance artist. Celeste XX, another performance artist. We have these conversations where we know that we're doing witchcraft. It is
Mm.
100% like shamanic work. Uh, I've I've definitely felt that to varying degrees. Some performances you're like, whoa, like that was a huge wave that just came out. And at the same time, it's also there's something inherently selfish, I think, about performance art. And
Yeah.
however people want to feel about that, but I've talked to all the people I just mentioned. We've had long dialogues around how it is a gift to the community as a sort of liminal edge walker, the way that
Yeah.
shamans probably have been historically. And there's something about it where you're trying to heal. For me, at least, I was really trying to heal my inner child. I was really trying to heal the disparate parts of my identity that weren't talking to each other. It was a somatic way to be seen, and to show yourself. And uh, you're changed by every performance you do, for sure. Like I felt totally morphed by every performance that I did. Yeah.
No. Interesting you mentioned the building this clay door and like fucking your way through to the
Yeah.
glory hole. And like thinking about that, like that liminal sort of portal space. And if I'm understanding correct, you aren't doing as much of that kind of performance work anymore. Do you think it's because maybe you sort of got what you needed and were able to sort of move into like some sound cheesy here, but some sort of new medicine? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. Man, I love the word medicine. I use it. It's in my pod every week. Not cheesy at all. You know, yes. And actually, I'm thinking about Coco Ono a lot here because she and I have
Mm.
had a longer dialogue over many years, and she's really watched my practice transform in a very intimate way. And she reflected for me, she was like, you're just ready for a bigger audience because what was happening in those art spaces, and like no poo poo to those spaces, but
Yeah.
it's a very niche group of people who are already intentionally engaged and intelligent and hungry for weird shit. And
Hmm.
I was in that, and I was totally in it. I was hungry for it. I was down to clown. And then at a certain point, I was like, oh, I don't know if it's because I have Aries at the top of my chart, but I was like, I need to continue to sort of compete with myself and go farther and farther and build bigger and bigger. And one of the ways in which expansion just came to me naturally, actually, was, through being in Los Angeles and being like, oh, I can actually do shamanic work on screen. I can do
Yeah.
shamanic like that. It's not, and in fact, the way that I look at my acting career, it's one large performance art piece to me. Like that's, and like, so I don't take it like super seriously where I'm like, I'm an actor. I'm like, yes, I love acting and I am an actor. And also it's this giant meta performance for me, you know, where but I can still be intentional about how I want to help shape the world and change the world outside of an art world, you know,
Yeah.
space.
Do you remember your first film performance? What was it?
Oh yeah, so funny. So funny. I to my own detriment, I think, I booked the first audition I ever did, and I booked
Okay.
the lead in an audition, and that's like, I don't know if it's unprecedented, but it sets you up for failure because you're like, this is so easy. I was like, oh, this is so easy. And I booked the role, and the funny thing about it, I just think of my Aquarius stellium, and anyway, I booked the lead in a science fiction short. So it was a short film, like not a
Yeah.
huge deal, but Jed Bell was the director. And my character is this like prototype trans character who in the future is like a prototype for clones. So my character got cloned many times. It's science fiction. My character got cloned many times in the film. So if you watch the film, there's like I'm on screen. There's like 5 of me on screen at any given point, and I have a whole scene where I clone my best friend and turn them into me. And so like I'm talking I'm acting with myself in these composite shots and having this whole dialogue. It's very trans, of course, but also like it's very science fiction, Aquarius,
Yeah.
cloning, all those things. Yeah. So I thought it was pretty funny. It was a really fun dip into film. That's for sure.
Can people see this film?
It's called The Number 12 and The Number 12 by Jed Bell. And I feel like it's probably able to be streamed. I would assume through Outfest, but I don't want to
Okay.
fully commit to that. But I would just type in The Number 12 Jed Bell, and you can always request to have it screened through him because he would always love to screen the film. So it's played at festivals for sure.
I listened to the interview you did with Jed, and it was so good. And I stopped myself from like texting you to like tell you like you're such a great interviewer. And it feels the two of you have such a great like friendship. And do you think by maybe that being your first film, like did that sort of help shape you as an actor, or sort of yeah, like how did that, it feels like that experience probably had some more weight to it that we can explore.
Yeah. Your Mercury and Pisces just picking up all the psychic vibes. Yes, totally. I mean, what Jed's film taught me and what Jed taught me was that my favorite place on the planet is to be on set. Like I love being on set. It's just like, I mean, apart from Korean spas, which I also love, by the way, I love being on set. And Jed's set was lovely for so many reasons. We also shot in San Francisco, so there was this like I love that. I have a my third ninth house, Jupiter, Mercury. I love going on a short trip. I love working like after traveling a couple hours. So I was like in San Francisco, and like it's just idyllic, and the weather was great, and we shot this film in San Francisco, and being in camaraderie with a team of people, like working towards a singular goal. I have an Aquarius stellium. Like I'm always wanting to work towards a goal with a group of people. And set is that. Like it can't happen unless everybody is working together. And I just was obsessed with the vibe. And Jed was great. Jed's a triple Leo. Bless, love, sweet love, a triple Leo. And he was great because he was just like the lion that just kind of rolled in and was like, hey, whatever you want to do. Like, how would you say it? How would you say the line? And it was just lovely to work with him. And he was such a soft landing point for my first experience, because there was just a lot of heart chakra, a lot of heart there from him. And I realized that I could have had a totally different first experience with a different director. It could have been really scary, but it just wasn't. It was so San Francisco. It was so like easy, and we worked hard, but like fun and loving and very queer. It was a very queer set. So yeah, it was a great launching point for me.
Having met Jed, knowing he's a triple Leo, I think he embodies like my favorite part of Leo. Because I think like at its core, the best part about Leo is, right, it's ruled by the sun, and it's this ability to be like, I'm awesome, and I'm going to show you that you're also awesome, right? Like you're great.
I think of his energy, the triple Leo in his capacity is very, to me, it's very like super slinky, warm, fuzzy boy cat, like the best boy cat you've ever, you know what I mean? Like a male cat. You know the way male cats are like big and they're like, they're like, yeah, I'm doing good, but I'm gonna lay down. But like, you want to snuggle me? I'm not gonna bite you. You know what I mean? Like that's Jed. I'm just like, oh great, you want to snuggle? I'm not gonna bite you. Love. Not gonna play mind games with me. Great, love. Just like the coolest boy cat you've ever met. Yeah. Yeah, I aspire to do that and be that.
Now I'm just like imagining Jed like on set in like some sort of robe, just sort of like lounging, like it's cool. You do your thing.
Yeah. He worked hard, but it didn't come off that he was like working hard. Yeah, it's exactly that. He would kind of roll in and be like, yeah, cool. Great. Oh, great. Like, how would you say that? Yes. And I've had other directors who've not been that chill about things. So it's a very varied experience.
I feel like everyone in film does like everything. Do you also write? Like, what are your ambitions in film?
Yeah. Well, primarily, I mean, the goal for me long term, Capricorn North Node, we got goals. It's like, oh my gosh, being a millennial, having a lot of Capricorn. Um, Acting is primarily the thing that I'm very excited about and really brings me life. My progressed rising being in Leo, and my Chiron is in Leo, and my Chiron's very active in my chart. So acting is healing the wound for me. It's healing a core part of my identity through that process. And yet the goal is to become a director. So it's not that I become a director and leave acting, but I kind of want to pull, like Maggie Gyllenhaal did this. Maggie Gyllenhaal, or even Jason Bateman, who I look like. Jason Bateman like but he directed Ozark, but he acts in Ozark. So like that's kind of where I see myself going, is like I'm actually really good at directing, and it's where I want to sort of do the later years of my practice, I think.
Yeah.
Because I really enjoy it and it's fun, but the more challenging, prescient experience is acting. Acting is more challenging to me. So it's not as easy. It doesn't come as easy to me. I think part of it is because I still sometimes want to hide, and you really can't. To be a very effective actor, you actually just have to show your cards in a very vulnerable way. And so I'm still leaning into like, I have an Aquarius stellium, and it's literally this huge Aquarius stellium. And then I have Chiron in Leo, and it's being aspected by Saturn, Mars, Lilith, Venus. Like, it's so crazy. My little Chiron in Leo is so pressurized. And that's the work I have to do. So to me, Aquarius is directors and Leo is actors. And I just feel like the acting thing for me is so pressurized, for at least right now. But again, I think eventually directing will be the longer term goal. Yes, I write. Yes, I produce. I do all those things. Truly a multi-hyphenate in the industry space, but like also a multi-hyphenate in lots of spaces. So, you know. Oh my God. When do I sleep? I actually sleep a lot because I have to, but yeah.
I think though that, I don't know, like there's something about like acting, to be a good director, I would think you'd have to be, I mean, maybe not always, but it feels like that can only benefit by being a good actor, right? By really understanding. And I think about Aquarius is the beautiful thing about it is being able to have the like perspective, the larger view, but then at the same time to be able to really go in and like embody the individual experience to sort of share with people. It seems like that's what you were doing on some level with your performance art. And again, coming back to that liminal moment when you broke through the clay, right? You're suddenly like, oh wait, I have to actually do this as myself now, in a sense.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. I agree with everything you just said. I think it all really, it's like a Russian doll of itself, in the sense that the performance art, I like wrote, produced, directed, and then performed in all those pieces. Like I built the music for those pieces, and I'm doing that in film. I mean, to a lesser degree, and it's great that I get to focus just on acting for certain things. But yeah, long term, it's more of like building the performance art, but on a bigger scale, basically, with a bigger audience.
And coming back to all of this, your multi-hyphenated explosion of a human, which you are, what role does astrology like have in your life in the day to day? And how does it work with all of those things?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Astrology is so funny. It's so funny. I mean, look, like my Aquarius stellium is in aversion to my Pisces sun. Like and I've always sort of felt like my career is kind of on a river, very Pisces, like sun in Pisces. Like I just feel like my career is ruled by Jupiter. It's just on a river floating. I'm not really sure which set I'm going to land on. I don't know which director is going to like me. I don't know what my next job is. And yet that aversion, it's like outside of my periphery, but astrology has always been there and always will be there. And I don't, it's funny because I was listening to Diana Rose today on the Astrology Hub podcast, or an astrology podcast with Chris Brennan. I was listening to her and watching both of them talk, and I was like, wow, like how cool would it be? How cool would it be if I could just be an astrologer? But I'm like not like I'm so many things. And astrology is always kind of an aversion to me in the sense that like I don't, it's not my main career. It's not going to ever be the main career, for me. I don't see myself as like just singularly an astrologer, but it literally haunts me every day. I do astrology every day, every freaking day. Um, I mean, I look at an ephemeris every morning, totally, and I'm not hyper OCD about it, but I do look at an
Yeah.
ephemeris every morning. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I'm so
No,
curious.
no, no, no. I'm thinking, and I can't. There was an astrologer who said this, and I'm forgetting their name right now, but I truly feel that the best astrologers, maybe tarot readers as well, right? We could bring this out, are the ones who
Yeah.
just who do other things. Because to me, astrology is story. It's being able to sit and relate with people. And I don't know why I was thinking of like someone like Jodorowsky, who's like one of the best tarot readers in the world, but also just has like it's like not his main thing, right? That's just it's almost like a practice that fuels him in this way, but he's fucking one of the best. Yeah.
I love that you brought up Jodorowsky because also an Aquarius, but he's one of my favorite people all time, just in terms of the work he does and his dedication to the esoteric, but being a filmmaker. And I thank you. Like that's exactly how I feel. I feel haunted by astrology in a good way. Like it's fueling. It's a daily fuel and it informs everything I do. And that's kind of how I feel. I tend to take a lot of I do electional astrology, so in the sense that like I'm always kind of like in terms of Hollywood and stuff like that, navigating Hollywood, I'm always looking at electional charts before I send like an important email out. Like I use it as a spiritual technology. I use astrology as a spiritual technology. I don't get too bogged down or like OCD about it. I don't. I love got Pisces. Like I'm like, all right, like I sent it out during the Mercury Cazimi, whatever. Like we'll see what happens. But I think of it as, in some ways, I think of it as a secret weapon. Sometimes I do. I actually think of it as a secret weapon in the sense that I feel like it gives me like bumper lanes, in the bowling lane. It's like there's bumpers in the bowling lane. Like I kind of know like, oh, wow, there's a Pluto square Mars transit happening this week. Probably happening in my third house. Probably don't want to like drive around the neighborhood like crazy. Probably don't want to speed. Probably don't want to you know what I mean? Like I like that. I like the bumpers in that way. And I also love now here in 2024 engaging with a whole community of people who are interested. Like that part, the community piece is also so awesome about astrology.
Oh, it's fantastic. I have to think too, coming back to this bumpers idea, right? Like I imagine, right, like working in the film industry. I mean, I'm not imagining. I think I'm pretty safe saying this can be extremely chaotic, right? You can feel like you're really in demand and then really not, or really pressurized. And for you, is it helpful to go, okay, like right now, I know like Rahu's in my 10th, things might feel really busy, but if they are in a couple of years, it doesn't mean I'm done. It just means that this is a period to like write my book, whatever it is, right?
Exactly. Oh, you got it. And I mean, I love Hellenistic practices and techniques. So like working with Time Lords, knowing, am I having a 10th house perfection year? Am I having an 11th house perfection year? 12th house perfection year? I'm looking at my career. You're absolutely right. Like I'm looking at my career through the lens of those techniques. It's very helpful because then I don't psych myself out. I don't just like freak out. Jupiter is about to enter my 12th house when it enters Gemini on May 25th. Like, okay, that's gonna maybe have a lot of behind the scenes stuff that people don't know about going on for a year. Like that's fine, great. Yes, it helps me contextualize my career in a way that I think I wish I could actually just give to other actors, particularly actors, because I think one of the dangers of the profession is just being like, oh, I'm inherently worth nothing because I'm not in demand. And it's like that's the shadow of Leo, in my opinion, is like, oh, since the sun is not hitting any objects, therefore the sun doesn't exist. It's like, no, the sun exists. It's just that like maybe right now it's not being reflected back to you in the way that you expect, And a lot of my clients are in the industry. A lot of directors, actors, people like that, they come to me and I help them using these techniques, give them timelines and perspectives.
I imagine that When you're on film sets, are you the person like going around like getting everyone's birth charts? You can figure out where everyone's Mercury is, and you're just like, ooh, like I see the tension building between so and so or whatever it is.
Can I tell you, this is why I mentioned my Aquarius being an aversion to the Pisces, because I am such a closet case about it on sets. Like, I won't say anything about astrology. People will, because it's LA, a lot of the time I'm either on shoots in LA or there's an LA crew, depending on
Yeah.
like where we are. I will always be like at the snack table, like at Crafty, and someone will be like, oh, well, they're a Scorpio, blah, blah, blah. Like, people will be talking. And if it comes up, I totally out myself. Like, I'll be like, well, yeah, I'm a professional astrologer. And then they're like, everyone's like, oh my God, I need you to read my chart. That's usually why I don't say anything, because then everybody's like, give me a 30-second reading or give me a 5-minute reading. And I'm like, that's not what I'm doing. But yeah, like, I'll talk to people in the makeup chair about it if it gets brought up, but like otherwise it's like I don't say anything about it. But of course I'm like checking my ephemeris every morning and I'm like, oh, moon's in Scorpio, it's gonna be a morose day for people on set, or everyone's gonna feel really intense about things or very passionate and goth about things. So I'm definitely like always temperature gauging, but I'm pretty behind the scenes about the astrology stuff on set, you know.
This is just such an off the cuff, silly question, but
Yes.
like, do you think there is a zodiac sign that you think just like overall makes like the best actors?
I would say I've thought about it a lot because I'm always looking up people's zodiacs or their charts
Yeah.
when I'm watching shows and stuff. Like, oh, for sure, I look up people's charts all the time. I would say that like having strong Leo placements, I really would. Like, it's just been pretty consistent. Like, having strong Leo placements, whether it's even I have a few actors I've seen that have like Jupiter conjunct Uranus, which is like pretty intense, but they have it in Leo and they just have that ability to like do things that translate in an expressive way.
Yeah.
But of course, I think Sun in Leo, Leo rising, even Leo moon to a degree. Although a lot of Leo moon people I've met tend to be directors because they desire to like their internal, right? Their internal
Uh-huh.
is the actor. So
Uh-huh.
they desire to see themselves on film, but they want to direct
Secret.
it. They're secret actors. And they'll never admit it, or they're like, I'm too shy, but they really want to be on screen, so they direct people on screen. But the Leo risings, Leo suns, even Leo or Venus or Leo, sorry, Venus or Mars in Leo, definitely Jupiter in Leo. Those things feel really strong to me. I would also say Pisces placements in a lot of ways. It's just that you see less Pisces because they get in their own goddamn way to get to the fucking career. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, oh my God. Like, once they get there without the drug addiction or whatever it is, then they're acting and they're great. Like, I'm a Pisces sun. It took me forever to just be like, Marvel, it's okay if you're seen. It's fine. You're gonna be okay. You have a gift to give to the world. Leos don't have, I think, as much friction getting there.
It's interesting. I think of like Leo, right? It's a fire sign. It's just it can be like there's a quickness to it. When I think of Pisces, interesting you mentioned this sort of addiction, but I think it's sometimes things that are totally true. Super sensitive, right? Like the psychic sponge, literally feeling everything, which can make for an amazing actor, I would think. But also maybe someone who's like crippled because they feel everything. My best story, I met a woman, I did a reading once, and I was asking her, I was like, do you have crazy dreams? And she's like, oh yeah. So I sleep with the television on, so I block them out. And I was like, that's the most
Yep.
Piscean thing.
Pisces thing ever. Yes. Yes. I know. This is so real. And even like we don't have to go down this whole wormhole,
Yeah,
but I'm thinking about you know, Rick Levine and his obsession with quincunxes and the quincunx between Pisces and Leo. And funny enough, when I was on a film set last year, I clocked out, like day was done, and I got into a shower. This is like the fucking Pisces Aquarius of me. Pisces is like I'm acting all day, and then I get into the shower and I talk in the shower. I talk all the time. I have a fucking Mercury Jupiter opposition. I can't stop talking. So I'm like in the shower talking to myself, absolutely, and I start talking about the quincunx between Pisces and Leo. Like I just start talking. I'm talking it out, like working it out, workshopping it basically with myself, and through that, I'm on set, I got the juices of the acting, but there is the quincunx between Pisces and Leo, I think, is kind of what we're speaking to in this moment of like, they are sacredly and spiritually connected. They both are deeply expressive energies and deeply expressive signs, and they have totally effing different ways of getting there. And I think for Leo, there is an element of like, the light's on, the light is on. And for Pisces, it's like all of the prism of the rainbow is there, but is it going to like drown the Pisces to like show that like Pink Floyd level prism? Like, are you safe? Yes, you are safe. But like, anyway, there's just something really magical between those two elements. Every time I've dated a Leo, it's just always been so healing for me because of that quincunx. Yeah.
My first thought was Jupiter. Just Jupiter thinks too much. That's Jupiter's problem.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Versus the sun is just like, I'm on.
One job.
Wow. Bright. I am bright. Yeah, I know. It's so good. Yeah.
This has been a fantastic. We are in our hour, so I'm going to conclude this by saying, what's coming up? Where can people find you?
Yes, amazing. Well, I do have a movie that's about to drop. I cannot announce it yet, which is, I know, I know. I was like, so Pisces, double-bodied fish here. But I have a movie that's going to come out, so stay tuned. If you follow me on Instagram at Marval A Rex, you can keep in touch with like how that is going. I'm really excited for that film to come out. And so Marval A Rex, it's MARVAL AREX. And that's another way to just keep in touch with what I'm doing in terms of comedy, because I'm always doing comedy shows. We'll have a Big Dead Energy show, which is our transmasculine comedy night, happening in Los Angeles on April 27th. So we have a show on April 27th. I tried to push it a little bit away from the eclipses. I was like, we're just gonna keep it in later. I like late April, I like that time frame. Working on a few projects that are still very behind the scenes. I think that's about it. Oh, you can always connect with me one-on-one for a reading. Like I love doing readings for folks, and that you can also find through the link tree on my Instagram. So it's all there. That link tree is like full, all the things.
Rad. I will put all of that in the show notes, and sign up for a reading with you. Follow your Instagram to wait till the movie mystery is revealed. I'm personally stoked.
Yeah, me too. Oh, this is lovely. Oh.
Beyond lovely. Thank you so much for sitting with me. There was no person I would rather spend my eclipse hangover with.
Me too. I'm like, yes. I was so excited. It's exciting to just talk and process it because it's so intense, So yeah. We're here. Our faces are slowly clearing up. Mine got a little red. It'll, I'm sure it'll cool down.
Lord. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can't wait to see you IRL soon. And thank you for having me on the pod. I'm so honored to be here.
Likewise. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
There are no parents, no other adults, no one to interfere with the fun.